Yeah, so why don't you just start off by introducing who you are and what you do and where you work?
Yeah, so my name is Jeremy Halteman. I work with Dankmeyer Prosthetics and Orthotics. Been working here for about 5 years, and yeah, we've been using Nomad now for most of that time. We've probably been using it for a good at least 3 years, if not four already,
Wow.
and have loved it. It started off it wasn't where today. It's not where it was 4 years ago. There's been lots of updates, but I've really been impressed with the folks over there. I mean, they gets regular updates. So
Yeah, well, tell me
always
more
improves.
about what it was like to use in the beginning. 3 years ago, what was Nomad like, and how, like, what pain point or bottleneck was it solving for you back then?
I mean, yeah, even back then, it was still a really good way to um, adjust the models. It was still a really good way to modify. Um, we were working mostly with voxels.
Yeah.
Um, and it still did a good job, right? You could still mask and blur and adjust relative to those areas, and change the size of the voxels as you needed, depending if you wanted to work in high res or low res.
So voxels, for those of us who don't know what those are like 3D pixels, right?
Right, right,
Right. So it's like a
right.
volumetric reading on a solid. And
Yep.
so Nomad, does that work in voxels?
It can work in voxels. It can also work in mesh. We started working almost exclusively with voxels, and it, now we don't do it that as much. Our workflow has definitely changed over time. The mesh tools are way better
Okay.
now than it used to be. I mean, you can decimate, you can subdivide, you can do anything, and remesh with, forcing a higher percentage of symmetrical triangles, or you can remesh with a low percentage of symmetrical triangles. So it really does. The mesh tools and the remeshing has greatly improved to the point where that's pretty much all we use. There are times we'll push something to voxel just to make it simple.
Yeah.
And the whole close features in voxel tend to work a little bit better. But you
Okay.
can still usually get them to work in with meshes and manually
Yeah.
closing the holes.
What's the biggest benefit of voxels over mesh? If tools aside, how have you leveraged one over the other as a format?
Um, Voxels sometimes work a little bit better if you're working in a generic shape that you would like to be a solid. For instance, if you're trying to work in what with the equivalent of a cast, right? I want the equivalent of a plaster cast. Sometimes working in a voxel can work a little bit better, but not always. A lot of the tools in Nomad are very dependent um, on the size of the pixel that you're influencing. So
Hmm.
if you're smoothing a very small pixel, the smoothing is less effective versus if you're smoothing a large pixel. So, and that's true for both voxels
And meshes.
and meshes. But when you force it into a voxel, it does a really good job of making them equal size. Um,
Wow.
it works both ways though.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends what your topology is. If you
Okay.
have a generic shape, voxeling works great. If you have something that's really, you have a really tight radius or something that needs to maintain high,
Cornership.
yeah, mesh is going to be better. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So, what did Nomad Sculpt win over when it came to choosing software? Like, you were choosing it against others, I'm assuming, right? So, like,
Yeah.
especially now, right? Like, I'm looking at it as it stands today, and it's blowing me away because it graduates against ZBrush for beginner workflows in almost every metric I can measure. So, how
Yep.
did you measure it when you were seeing it against other, say, O&P software?
I mean, it's not OMP. It's not OMP software, right?
I know.
It does an amazing job at dealing with meshes. That's where it excels, right?
Hmm.
Where it lacks is it doesn't measure. Like the measuring tool is still very rudimentary. It's just a straight line measure. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's sort of useful. It's not great.
Well, the
Let's be
gizmo tool allows you to do measured movements, which is a
right.
saving grace, right? But the
Yeah,
measuring tool specifically.
right. You can't. It's hard to actually measure the model, but as far as like moving something around, you can move areas very very precisely. So that part kind of makes up for the lack of
Measurement
measuring
tools.
tools,
Yeah.
and some of the new shelling tools. Some of the new shelling features actually go a long ways to also being able to kind of do some of those same type of adjustments that you're used to doing in CAD, right? You can reduce by percentage, or if you use the shell tool, you can reduce by a radius or a distance, right? So it has, because it's built for the modeling community, like the digital modeling community, it does a really good job of having tons of modeling and tons of, mesh and voxel manipulation. It's built to do that.
Yeah.
And that just lends itself nicely. If you know how to leverage the tools in the correct way, it lends itself really nicely to playing well with a lot of our shapes.
Yeah.
If you know what the limits are and know where you can exploit it, right?
Nice. Have you ever set up your iPad with a keyboard and a mouse and used it as like a traditional CAD keyboard setup with hotkeys?
I have a keyboard and a mouse set up with it, but I almost always use the touch screen. And the two reasons for that is I have mine set to, there's a trackball setting in there that allows you to move, and you can actually use two fingers to tilt your model. So you're not constrained just to like the rotation. So if all you ever do is the rotation, you want to stay in the same orientation, then yeah, you could get away with a mouse. But the other reason I actually really like using the Apple Pencil is it's pressure sensitive. So some of those tools, if you're not wanting to be as precise and you just want to do like a carve or something like that, and you don't need an exact depth, it is pressure sensitive. So some of those tools, some of those sculpting things, or even like smoothing, the smooth tool is pressure sensitive. So you press harder, it will be more aggressive. You press lighter, it gives you a little bit more control than just a mouse and a keyboard. And it's better than like a Wacom tablet. I tried a Wacom tablet with ZBrush, and I don't know, I couldn't.
Yeah. No,
it took me a while to even get sort of half comfortable with it. Whereas like this, you learn it in like, I don't know, an afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed that too. Like right now, I'm recording you on my Wacom tablet. Like I have a very traditional, nice Wacom, and then a desktop PC for my work. But that was the standard 10 years ago. Right now, we're like in the middle of this transition to completely portable iOS solutions, which is just unreal. So the stylus, then, I was trying to push that, and I've always gotten pushback from that myself, just trying to get people to adopt a stylus workflow, because it gives you a one-for-one transfer, potentially, in my eyes anyway, for plaster skills into digital spaces, right? I never really got that off the ground, I don't think, but would you now say that this is a next level above that? Like this actually gives you that cash in?
Yeah, it's a lot more similar to that. I still do a lot of my modifications, like with the gizmo tool, so I can be very, very precise on how far I'm moving something or how far I'm carving something. But I still use, I take advantage of the Apple Pencil that is pressure sensitive, especially for the smoothing operations. So you can really control what you're doing.
How much of Nomad Sculpt's arsenal can you use to actually design devices? Because to me, everything Nomad does is up to the plaster positive, modified plaster positive, and then you transition to CAD software to carry through a product design. But is that division is that blurring with Nomad?
Oh yeah, it's blurring. It's not a hard stop, for sure. We can and have and do a increasing amount of end design in Nomad. Now, yes, there is an element of you need other CAD software to generate some files. Now we'll generate other CAD files, export STLs, and bring them into Nomad to work.
Nice. So you're still designing templates in CAD, but like your cutting tools, your merging tools, your wall thickness tools, your shuttle.
Unless it's something that's really, really basic. If I just need to drop in a cylinder that's X millimeters long and X millimeter circumference, I can do that in Nomad very easily. But anything much beyond that, if I need a 4-hole cutting pattern,
no,
not built for that yet. I mean, you could do it; it'd just be very, very cumbersome.
Yeah.
So there is still some back and forth, and with the ability to now generate quad meshes, really beautiful quad meshes in Nomad, you can get if you want to go into Fusion, take it right up to that, completely generate your quad mesh, and you're straight into Fusion.
Yeah.
So I have done that, but yeah, I mean, some of the other guys here have done increasing amount of end use design totally in Nomad. things like designing AFOs. Actually, I had a guy designing a SMO to print this morning, totally in Nomad because of the offset tools that are available. You can shell, you can offset, variable thickness. You can do all that in Nomad.
Wow. And you can you do latticing or meshing like that of any type?
I mean, you could. Short answer is yes, you can. I mean, not in the way that, not in the way that like end topology would or anything like that. It's not that advanced. But you can create a mask. You can create custom masks and alphas that would allow you to selectively stamp it, an area. There's also some workflows where you can. I'm not as proficient on these. One of the guys that works here is actually pretty good at it. There's another sister app called Procreate that is it's more of an image editing software for the iPad, and you can create custom brushes. You can do stamps. You can do UVs, coloring. You can color straight onto the wrap colors, all that stuff. With that, he's a little bit better at that than I am.
Very cool. So color workflows from Nomad into Procreate. You can UV wrap, cylindrical wrap, spherical wrap.
Yep, you can do all that, and actually in Procreate, paint on the 3D image or on the 3D model. You can paint on it. It's actually painting on the UV, but you can do that. Yeah,
very cool.
There is some quirks about that. Just exporting the OBJ directly out doesn't work very well.
No, I would imagine. I mean, you have to have a perfect UV map, right? You'd have to map it really well.
Well, you have to. There's an issue with the way, like trying to load it into other programs. It doesn't recognize it and it doesn't like line up. We're having an issue with this actually recently. We did find a workaround though. You have to bake all the textures. You have to bring it back into Nomad, rebake the textures to a new UV, and then it works.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, color workflows in printing have always been a bit of a. No one has tried to properly streamline that workflow. So that's really fascinating.
Yeah, Nomad can approach that. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, I've got a lot on my heels to learn then, not just ZBrush and color. And the other part of this too that the Nomad wins over is portability. The fact that it's in your hand and you can have it in clinic on the stool as you go between patients, and you're comb scanning on the same device that you're editing on, right? And so have you done that workflow? How does the portability of something like this change the dynamic in a clinic, especially with your team, with patients, right? Like, how is that?
I don't typically modify directly in clinic, but I mean, I have absolutely, if I'm scanning either the patient or a device or something like that, if you want to bring it directly into Nomad, clean up your scans super quick, remesh, like you can do all that really quick. And there's been a handful of times where I'll like scan someone and then immediately come back and just, let them go, but then immediately come back and have something cranked out in 15 minutes.
Right, and show them the preview kind of thing.
I typically don't do that, but I'll crank something out and just pass it off to my techs or something.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. So there's no patient engagement with that necessarily.
You could. I don't.
Yeah, that's fair.
But you could.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so when it comes to the educational component of this software, I'm trying my best to start up a beginner series on this, but it really is just getting to the quad mesh benchmark and then leveraging other tools really good in CAD design. But is there something more valuable than learning O&P specific software? What do I tell new graduates looking to get in, or if you're telling people who are thinking about getting into this program, what's the number one thing they should really consider?
It's a good question. I mean, I like the freedom that working in non-O&P specific program. I like the freedom that working in those kind of programs brings, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's, and you can make the same argument for like, Mesh Mixer and Fusion, all those things, like it all goes hand in hand. There are some things that O&P softwares do really well. Typically that's measurements. Yeah. O&P softwares usually do a better job of gleaning measurements from your models. But as far as like doing the actual operations of modifying and the things that you can do, you're just not limited in the way that you would be in a traditional O&P CAD program, right? You can, you can do all kinds of things. If you just want to grab something and move it a little bit, you can just grab it and move it, and it's super quick, and there's no It's I think you have more design freedom if you know how to leverage the tools properly.
Yeah. Yeah, and those, again, those skills are going to transfer out. Have you ever been able to use these skills in Nomad for anything outside of O&P? Have you projects, personal projects, gifts, presents?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I've messed around with stuff before. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because like I'm sure you can take anything from Thingiverse and bash it together. One of the funniest things that I've done back when Mesh Mixer was still a part of my arsenal is like I would 3D scan my brother and his friends, and I get their head busts, and then I go find Thingiverse models of crazy action figures or something, and plaster them on and print them these models of themselves as superheroes. And
oh, that's a good idea. Now I haven't done that, but you told, oh man, Nomad is like that's the sweet spot for Nomad.
Easy stuff, right? Yeah. So you can get full color comb scans of your face. I do that all the time for my testing, and then just take that and put it on a minifigure, or even I can give you a 1/45th scale model of your head, so you can put it on your 40K Space Marines or something. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So in full color, if you want no less. But that's so cool. I really like that you're saying the same things that I have been saying for a long time. Just like that, design freedom really is an investment in yourself, and you're going to use agnostic tools to do that. Yeah, I mean, and I have you to thank for pointing me in this direction. Yeah, I remember you were showing me in AOPA in 2023, I think it was. Showing me all the cool stuff you were doing even before quad meshing was available. So, you know, thanks to you and your team for sort of introducing this, and I mean, you're debt for bringing this to light. But otherwise, I feel like my course is going to be ready midsummer, early summer, and if I'll have this interview maybe in the front of it and snippets of it online leading up to release or something.
That's fine.
Yeah, and you're okay if I use you as a reference for just experience about it, because clinical advice. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And if you're down, I would love to talk to your colleague who's really good with the color stuff. Just to like a 10-minute screen recording, even if you want to send me of like, here, this is what it looks like. You know, give me the overview, because like that'll kill ZBrush outright, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can share my screen right now and show you.
If you want to do that, I'm still recording. Let's do this, because oh my goodness, it's amazing how quick these tools change, right? Like every 2-3 years, you have to retool. Sometimes it feels like, which is why I want to pick softwares that will last. So I'm betting head over heels that Fusion 360 is going to last in terms of a standard, and you know, I'm pretty sure Nomad's going to have more weathering capability than ZBrush.
So here you go.
Oh yeah, lovely.
Right? All this is color done in Nomad. Well, actually, I must confess, this is actually the one that spurred the problem of not being able to export the OBJs correctly.
I think I got a
so
text
actually,
from Brent
if you
that
notice,
morning.
It doesn't quite line up the same way. Like we couldn't get it to export the OBJ correctly for whatever reason. It wasn't wrapping and displaying on their end. So I ended up having the guys over at Advanced 3D just wrap this really quickly for me.
Okay.
So they actually did the one that we use. However, I was able to confirm later that after we properly exported and baked, it's the bake operation. You have to bake the UV. That this did send over correctly. He was able to open it up in his software and it worked. But
so what was the file format? It was OBJ baked or like USDZ?
Yep, OBJ.
Or something?
OBJ, but you have to bake it. So in order to get that, where was it? So if you go to this one and then miscellaneous, where like all the decimation tools are, you have to bake it.
Okay, baking textures.
Yep. And then it displays correctly.
Gotcha. And so you wrap this image in Nomad here, or like you did use the Procreate workflow?
No, he used Procreate to apply this. So it was it came as a flat image, and then he created. How did he do it? Did he create individual face groups? He might have created individual face groups and then applied colors to the face groups in Procreate. I'm not exactly sure how he did it, to be honest.
Okay.
It was something along those lines of you can use the face groups to influence the way it generates a UV.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And
that's
then
quad meshing, isn't it? That's essentially just
essentially, right. And then after you have all that squared away, then he took it into Procreate, which has tools to like exactly copy the colors that were sent to us. And so he was able to like apply those colors directly and make sure they're the same, rather than like sitting there and, you know, if you tried to do this in Nomad, you'd be guessing, you know, am I getting the right color? But Procreate is all set up for that. So
very cool.
Yep.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, well, yeah, definitely show me that workflow sometime. I'd love to see it.
Stop sharing screen. There we go. Oh. I think I'm stopped. There we go. But yeah, so, and this arm was completely designed in Nomad.
Even the hand?
Not the hand. No, the hand is just a TRS hand that we purchased. And also the wrist. The wrist is an example of like, we brought the wrist in CAD. We designed the wrist in a CAD, brought that in and just, you know, did a Boolean operation to Boolean it into the mesh. But everything else was, you know, inside, outside, double wall. All that was done with Nomad. And we just made sure there's enough of a hole when this was drilled, right? There's a 1/2-20 thread at the wrist. So all of this powder, you know, was able to escape, and variable thickness walls blended all in. So yeah, wow. Perfect example of how you can use Nomad for end use devices with just a little bit of CAD right at the end. That's super simple.
That's so cool. Well, this is inspirational. This is so awesome. You've informed my investment for the next few years.
So yeah, it's pretty good. You can do a lot. But then some of the other sister apps that we've been using, you should check out. Hold on a second. So Shaper 3D is really good for iPad CAD. It's very traditional CAD, but it's very good.
Okay.
It's not quite as advanced as like Fusion. You can't do the whole T-spline workflow. It doesn't do that. But as far as like if I just want to draw a basic wrist like this, it is stupid quick.
Yeah.
Stupid quick. It is a subscription base, so it's kind of expensive-ish. I mean, it's fine. Okay. It's not great. The other one that we recently ran across that we're still trying to figure out is called Valence 3D.
Okay.
But that is a T-spline editing tool.
Okay. So you have to leverage that with something like Shaper.
Well, between Shaper and the quad meshing from Nomad. So we have quad meshed in Nomad, taken into Valence, and then you can edit the strings, or you can edit the individual quad meshes. I mean, I guess it can. I'm not sure how it handles that. I don't know if it keeps it a quad mesh or if it turns it into a
parasolid spline, probably.
Yeah, probably some kind of parasolid spline. But you can do all those same operations like you would do in the Fusion workflow. You can do a lot of similar stuff. I haven't got it completely figured out yet. But you're supposed to be able to snap to objects. You're supposed to be able to snap to CAD, things like that.
Cool.
Haven't figured it out yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll see if I can help out there.
But it's pretty decent. It seems promising. And also that app is brand new, so it's not, you know, it hasn't been out very long.
Yeah, it'll only get better with time.
But
very cool. Well, hey, thank you so much for all of your insight. This has been really valuable, and I'm sure others are going to find it valuable too.
Yeah, of course. No, Nomad's really, at the price point, you're not going to beat it. You can't. For $20, if you already own an iPad, like it's $20 plus the 15 for the
exoside
quad meshing tools. Yeah, you got to get exoside in there. But even if you don't get that, man, it's still more than worth it.
Yeah,
more than worth it.
More than worth it. Well, I really appreciate your time, Jeremy. Thanks so much, and I'm sure I'll point more people to you soon.